Yeah, that's the sound that makes us, ask for a breath mint for Office fans. Good morning, everybody. 1 week from today, we'll know who we got, and we may not know, actually, if they decide to trade back into the second round. I'm going to give you very shortly 3 players who I'd be surprised if Washington took in the first round. Next week on Monday and Tuesday, we'll get into the players that I hope they take. Max is here with me. We've got 2 guests on the show today. Tark El-Bashir will be on with us in about 20 minutes to talk about the Caps playoff matchup against Montreal. Game 1's not until Monday. I thought all of the game 1s were going to be scheduled for either Saturday or Sunday. That's an NBA thing. Actually, the latest game 1 comes on Tuesday night. So they really are spreading out the initial game 1s of the NHL playoffs. The Caps will play Monday night in game 1 at home against Montreal. Tark El-Bashir will join us in about 20 minutes. My friend Joe House from The Ringer at 11 to talk NFL draft, NBA playoffs, and a lot more. So a week from today, if we assume Washington did make a pick in the first round at number 29 overall. And if we take a consensus of the mock draft availables at 29, players that if you have followed enough of the pre-draft conversation, a lot of these players have either been mocked to Washington or they're available for Washington at number 29. I have a list of players, 3 of them, in fact, that after doing a little bit of homework and a little bit of watching and reading, but watching a lot over the last 2 nights, really, there are 3 players that I think I would be surprised if they took at number 29. And I'll start with, I'd be surprised if Washington takes James Pierce Jr., edge rusher, Tennessee. Starting with, he's got red flags all over him, especially from a work ethic standpoint. There are a lot of people that want to be assured, and maybe Washington has been assured, but there is too much smoke around James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee, with respect to work ethic. And by the way, a couple of incidents related to traffic charges. Nothing significant. Speeding, driving on a suspended license, failure to provide insurance information, all young people stuff. But really, the issue has been missed off-season workouts at Tennessee, occasionally showed up late, and there's just a question as to whether or not James Pierce Jr. loves football. So number 1 is, we know this organization is looking for a continuation of building upon the culture that they started to create last year. 7 of their 9 draft choices last year were team captains, were guys that were squeaky clean to a certain degree. I don't see them taking a flyer on James Pierce Jr. at the end of the first round with a first-round pick. By the way, he could be gone before 29, or he could be one of those guys that drops into the second round because of these concerns. He is a legitimate athlete and one of those kind of longer athletes. And he has the ability at 6'5", 245, ran 4.47. This is a guy that's tall, athletic, has the long arms, the angular kind of a build that you see in some of those edge rushers in today's game. Got, real twitch, ability to bend, ability with multiple moves to rush the passer. I think that he's fine in the run game. I don't know that he's great as an edge setter, but I'll tell you what, to be great as an edge setter in the run game, you got to be willing to study. You got to be willing to work. James Pierce Jr., no doubt, is a first round, early second round talent as an edge rusher. I just have crossed him off the list because everything you read about Pierce Jr., everything is that NFL GMs need to be assured that this guy's work ethic will be NFL caliber, will be professional at the next level. I just don't see Washington messing around with that at all. By the way, I'm not including this player on the list of 3 players that I'd be surprised if they took in the first round, because I don't think there's any chance that he makes it to them, because his talent is obscene, and that's Mike Green, the pass rusher from Marshall. There's some, issues with him as well. Sexual assault allegations from when he was at UVA. But I don't see him getting there, so I didn't include him on this short list of players that I'd be surprised if Washington took, because I'm including really – I'm looking at a list of the players that, from a consensus standpoint, in most mocks, might be there and have, by the way, in some cases, been mocked to Washington. James Pierce Jr., I don't see Washington taking at number 29. Number 2 on my list of I'd be surprised if they took him. This is going to be a surprise to some of you. And it was a surprise to me after last night. I spent a lot of time looking at the running backs. I'd be surprised if they took Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina at number 29. It's possible he's gone too, but he's not in Ashton Genty's class. I've decided that Hampton's really nice, but he's more in the mix with all of the other backs that I think start to come off the board on night 2. Based on their ability. I like Hampton. I just don't see him as a first-round pick at running back. I've said this before, but if you're going to take a running back in the first round, you have to be sure that you're getting somebody of the caliber of the elite backs in the league, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, etc. I like Hampton. I think there's a chance he'll be a solid starting pro running back, but I don't see him as an elite running back at the next level, worthy of taking, because of the position, in the first round. If Washington were going to take a first-round running back that isn't Ashton Genty, I'll give you 1 or 2 that I'd feel better about than Omarion Hampton, but to be honest with you, I don't feel great about any of them after Genty. Genty is all-world talent and has a chance to be an elite back in the NFL. Running backs end up becoming elite taken after the first round. But just in looking at Hampton right now, to me, he's not a first-round running back, that position. At other positions, you would consider taking him at number 29 overall, but I'm not taking a running back that I don't see as elite. Part of what makes me concerned about Hampton, I love his size. I love his power. I love his motor. I don't think he's got the greatest of vision. I don't think he really has breakaway kind of football speed. I know he ran, I think, 4.45 at the combine. I don't think he pass blocks particularly well. I spent a little bit of time looking at the backs that I liked before really looking at him last night. I think that he doesn't have enough wiggle, runs a little bit upright. I just don't see elite here with Hampton. I see very good, but don't see elite with Hampton. I do with Genty. God, man, Genty is going to be really good. I've mentioned this guy's name many times before because I just kind of fell in love with the player when he was at Oregon State. But to me, I don't see much difference between Hampton and Damian Martinez from Miami. And Martinez is definitely climbing boards. I've seen him mocked, night 2, second round, as high as second round. It's also possible that he's still around on day 3 because, like Hampton, he isn't necessarily a stellar pass blocker at this point. You see that with a lot of young backs coming out. They're just not there yet because really at the college level, they've been asked to carry the freight, guys like Hampton in particular. I mean, he had some unbelievable football games last year. And if you go back and you look at some of the games that he had great games against, they weren't against stellar defensive teams necessarily. Wake Forest, as an example, was probably his best game. He rushed for 244 yards. He had a game early in the season against Minnesota, very early in the season. Minnesota pretty good defensively in the Big Ten. He averaged 4.3 yards per carry. He rushed for $129. Took him 30 carries to get there. There wasn't a lot of great defense necessarily in the ACC. You saw that like with the Miami Georgia Tech game, the Miami Louisville game when Miami was fighting for a playoff spot. There just wasn't great defense across the board. Carolina played in a game this year against JMU. The final score was 70-50. North Carolina hasn't had a good defense in college football for years. They gave up 70 to JMU in that game, by the way. Hampton did rush for 139 yards on 19 carries, 7.3 yards, but they had to start throwing the football a bunch in that game. So I'd be surprised if they took Hampton at number 29. I like the player. I just don't think he is someone worthy of taking with a first-round pick in a draft that is heavy in running back talent. And I don't see a lot of separation between him and some of the other backs after Genty. Like, I see Damian Martinez right there with Hampton. By the way, in stature, in size, in style, I think Henderson's got much more breakaway, big game, big play potential. I like Caleb Johnson a lot from Iowa. So I'd be surprised if they took Omarion Hampton from North Carolina at number 29. And then lastly, and this is a player that I really like a lot too, but I would be surprised if they took Luther Burden III, wide receiver from Missouri, at number 29 overall. He has been one of my favorite players to watch in college football the last couple of years. He is truly, special in creating space and then with the ball in his hands after the catch. I like everything about him, watching him on the field. But one of the things in sort of doing a bunch more research on the players, and I do remember this being a bit of an issue. He's got a bit of a temper. He's gotten for things on the field, lost his cool multiple times. He has an issue occasionally with taking plays off. If the play isn't coming to him, he looks a bit like he's lacking in wanting to participate. Who does that remind you of? And by the way, there are a lot of similarities in style of play. Jahan Dotson, who they begged during last offseason and during training camp to play it out, to hustle. We talked about this last year when they let Dotson go, even before trading Dotson and moving on from him. You heard Dan Quinn saying, we got to see him play every play out. They want dive on the floor hustlers. It's who they want. And I don't think that's Luther Burden, for them anyway. I love the player in terms of the talent. I think he is going to be a really good receiver, probably more inside than outside. But I think the concern over a guy like Luther Burden is he going to play it out every play? Is he going to dive on the floor for every loose ball? It's not what Jahan Dotson was. They saw that in him. That's not what they wanted out of their wide receivers. They also want their wide receivers to block. It's not necessarily Luther Burden's favorite thing. He is more of an Olay blocker, like, hey, let me just kind of shade you in this one direction. I don't see them taking Luther Burden III. 3 players that have all been mocked to Washington or have all been mocked in the general area of Washington at 29. I don't see James Pierce Jr. being selected by Washington. I don't see Omarion Hampton being selected by Washington, and I don't see Luther Burden III being selected by Washington. I think all 3 players are extraordinarily talented. I think Hampton's going to be a good NFL back. I do. But I don't see him being in the same category of high-level, top 5 kind of a back. I see Ashton Genty that way. And I see Hampton closer to some of the backs that you could get on night 2 or even day 3. And when I say that, I think he is going to go long before some of those backs because I do think his talent level is, worst case, day 2. But I don't think Washington's going to take him at 29. I don't. Luther Burden and James Pierce Jr. just have issues that don't fit with the kind of people and players effort-wise that they were looking for last year and that I think they'll be looking for this year. Just my guess. Week from today, we'll know. I mean, there's a chance that they trade back. And by the way, there are other players that I think will be a concern, for them at number 1. But those were the 3 that really stood out from 3 position groups that are possible for Washington at number 29 overall. Like Egbuka, to me, is somebody they'd probably want. Different overall, I think, overall in the, for the lack of a better description, intangible set than a Luther Burden. But, yeah, and at this point, to me, I think the running back that deserves to go in the first round is Ashton Genty. And after that, I don't see a first-round back unless somebody really falls in love with Trayvon Henderson and his game-breaking and play-breaking ability. But I don't see it as a first-round pick. Pierce Jr., talent, no doubt. But clearly, I mean, out of the players in the first round, at the edge spot in particular, Mike Green and James Pierce Jr. have the biggest red flags going into this. Green is a better player, a more productive player, and I think will be a better pro than Pierce Jr. And Pierce Jr., you do have to wonder, just where the actual fit is from an all-down standpoint. He's got the body type, though, that teams seem to be looking for in edge rushers in this day and age. Max, let's get to a what do you got, if you'll hit that sounder.
All right.
What do you got?
So tonight is the final night of the NBA play-in round. The Heat and the Hawks at 7, the Mavs and the Grizzlies at 9:30. The reason I'm bringing it up is I had somebody reach out to me to say I was wrong about the Memphis draft choice that the Wizards have. And the person who reached out to me, and I couldn't find your tweet, sorry, but you were correct. I did not know that it was a protected pick. So if you're a Wizards fan and you'd like them to have a second first-round pick in June, in addition to wherever their own pick falls after the draft lottery, then you really want Memphis to win tonight against Dallas. If they win, they're in the playoffs, and the Wizards will get the Grizzlies' first-round pick. If they lose, they're not in the postseason, and they've got a top 14 protected pick, which means the picks will come in the form of second-round picks down the road. So if you didn't think you had a rooting interest in tonight's game, if you're a Wizards fan, you do. Root for Memphis to beat Dallas tonight in the play-in game. They would then be the 8th seed, and they would face Oklahoma City in the first round of the postseason. And the Wizards would snag their first-round pick, which would come, I think, at 19 or 20, right around there. All right? Root for Memphis tonight. They're 6.5-point favorites. I was actually surprised by that. I thought the way Dallas played the other night and with John Morant and the effort that Memphis gave on Tuesday night in that game at Golden State, and John Morant rolled his ankle and it looked pretty bad. I actually thought the line would be shorter than 6.5, but clearly the odds makers kind of like Memphis to win this game, and that, again, would be good for the Wizards. All right, up next, Tariq El-Bashir will jump on with me. The Caps now know their first-round playoff opponent. They finished up the regular season last night as well. We'll talk some Caps hockey with our friend Tariq El-Bashir when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and the Team980.com.
No stick for Poulin.
Slicing through, Poulin got it. Ovechkin scores!
897. That's where he ends 2024-2025, the all-time leading goal scorer. 2 goals since the record setter against the Islanders about 11 days ago. And he finishes with 897. So next year we'll get the beginning of the season to be about the chase for 900. Joining us right now is Tarek El-Bashir. Tarek's done a phenomenal job covering our hockey team in this town for a long time. He does it now as the insider for Monumental Sportsnet. You can follow Tarek on X, on Twitter, at Tarek_El-Bashir. So will we start next year with the chase for 900? Will that be a big deal?
Well, the man said a couple of days ago that he's not retiring.
Right.
Not that anyone expected that. He's got another year on his contract. So absolutely. It was funny. I was talking to some other members of the media last night on a text thread, and we were all taking guesses at where he might finish his NHL career. And we're all pretty bullish. We were all saying 925, 930, 935. Look, Alex, at 39 and a half years old, scored 43 goals this season, and he missed 16 with a broken leg. He's got a lot of hockey left in him, and he's as competitive as anyone I've ever met. I got to imagine that now he's broken Gretzky's record. He wants to put just enough space between him and anyone else, so the Austin Matthews and Leon Draisaitl's of the world don't ever have a chance of catching him.
If he had played the entire season, would he have led the league? I did not do the math. I think he finished 8 goals behind Draisaitl for the overall goal scoring. I think he may have ended up leading the league in goals, right?
Kevin, I think you're right. That was another part of our discussion last night. If he didn't miss those 16 games, because remember, those 16 games came at a time where he was scoring at an incredible clip, at probably the best clip of his entire career, 20 years in. He scored goals 14 and 15 in that game and then suffered the broken leg. So he was on his way to a hat trick in that game at Utah. So I absolutely think he would have led the league in scoring. And it really is amazing. And I don't know if you were able to catch last night's game, but watching Sidney Crosby score and then watch Alex Ovechkin respond with a goal a little bit later. I mean, how lucky are we for 20 years here in D.C. to have watched the greatest goal scorer of all time, but also his primary nemesis has also been at just an equally high level over these 20 years. It just really, when I saw that last night, I was like, I cannot believe we are still 2 decades in watching these guys trade goals. Unbelievable.
You know what's really interesting about that? And I didn't know this until recently because I don't follow the sport like you do. But this is the 3rd straight year Pittsburgh has missed the playoffs altogether. Yeah. What's wrong with their organization?
Yeah, they doubled down on veterans, and at a time where they should have been doing what the Capitals were doing, which was, and I know it's easy to say this in retrospect, but you need youth, you need young blood, you need young legs, you need speed, you need hunger, you need desire. You have to have a good mix of young players who are hungry and want to prove themselves, and veteran guys who have been there and they know what it looks like and how to get there, and they can show the young guys the way. And they don't have a great mix. They skew way too veteran and don't have enough on the young high-end talent side. And their general manager has made some bad signings, and that's put them in cap hell. I really don't know, and I don't know what the answer is for them, but I'll tell you this: I feel bad for Sidney Crosby because he's too good a hockey player to not be in the playoffs competing for a Stanley Cup. Now, I know he made up for that on the front end of his career when he won 3 and played for 4, but it really is a shame to watch a talent like him. He had 90 points again, and he's not going to be in the playoffs. That's bad for hockey. That's bad for the NHL. It's bad for Sydney. It's bad for the Capitals rivalry. The world is better when the teams that have the biggest followings, and the Penguins are one of them. The hockey world is better when those teams are doing well. And this year, not so good, Kevin. The Penguins missed, the Rangers missed, the Bruins missed. I mean, a lot of the teams that have Chicago missed again. That's not good.
So, I've asked you this before, but now that he's at 897 and he broke the record, I think most of you guys have always said that when both of their careers are over, Crosby and Ovechkin, that Crosby will be ranked higher on a list of the greatest players to ever play the game. Do you still feel that way?
I don't feel that way anymore because of what Alex achieved this year. I mean, breaking that record was not just, a big record in the hockey world. I mean, that was a big record in the sports world. I mean, they're both going to go down as top 5 to 10 players in the entire history of hockey. I think critics would say Ovi was more one-dimensional, has been more one-dimensional in his career, but that's really a product of the position he plays, right? He's a winger. He's a goal-scoring winger. He's not a center. He doesn't take face-offs. He doesn't necessarily drive play. He doesn't have the same responsibilities in the defensive zone. They just play different positions, and so it's always been hard for me to compare because it's not really apples to apples. It's not apples to oranges either. It's not exactly a straight comparison. So, and the one other thing I would say about Sydney is all the championships. I mean, Alex won 1, Sid won 3 and played for 4. I mean, that's a big difference. But I think if Obi were on a 3-way call with us, he would go, but he had all those other number 1 draft picks with him.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think Sid had a little more help along the way, particularly early in his career. He had Evgeny Malkin, he had Marc-Andre Fleury, he had Chris Letang. Now, Ovi eventually got those supporting stars around him, but I feel like Crosby had those right away.
So before we get to the matchup against Montreal and how you see it, and by the way, just how in general the odds makers see the Caps heading into this postseason overall, which is, they're not very bullish. But I think I had Ted on a week and a half ago, something like that. And we were talking about sort of the need for a second cup. The pressure, was off Ovi in 2018. I compared it, by the way, Tarek, to Rory at the Masters. Like they had been carrying around this incredible weight of expectations that had been unrealized, and you just saw it in their reactions. Ovi in Game 5 in Vegas in 2018, Rory Sunday at Augusta. But anyway, it's now been 7 years since that cup, and Washington hasn't even won a playoff series. They've been ousted in the first round every year they've been in the playoffs since the cup. Has that pressure to go deep into the postseason kind of rebuilt itself upon his shoulders?
I don't know if it's the same pressure that he had before he won in 2018, but I know he feels pressure again now, particularly with how well the team did this year. He desperately wants to win another championship before he retires. He has achieved 2 massive accomplishments, right? He won a championship and he passed Wayne Gretzky. His legacy is secure in this game. That said, you put a second cup 7 years after you won the other with a totally different roster. The only guys left, Kevin, are Ovi, Wilson, Carlson, and Lars Eller, who came back. If Obi were to win another championship with a totally different cast of characters, I think that would catapult him into a different stratosphere. And I know, he desperately wanted to pass Gretzky. I mean, that's a really big deal for him. That was a really big accomplishment, an incredible feat. That said, he wants to win too, and I do feel like they are under a little bit of pressure right now because of how good their regular season went, because of the talent that has been assembled around them. What I would also say is the way this team is built, almost everyone is under contract for next year too. So it's kind of like a 2-year window in my mind. I mean, you want to do it right now, right? It's not like they can go, oh, we always have next year. They want to do it right now. But that said, this team is going to look almost exactly the same next year, with a couple of new players, younger players entering the fray. Like I said, that's a long-winded way of saying I do feel like the pressure has been building, but I feel like this year the pressure got a lot higher, or is a lot higher going into the postseason, simply because they were so good in the regular season. I mean, remember, there was a time 6 weeks ago when we thought the Cats might beat Winnipeg out for the President's Trophy.
Right.
They might actually get the number one overall seed. And then they kind of became Obi focused, and rightfully so. I mean, they wanted to get their captain to a record that we never thought was going to be broken. And so they kind of changed the way they operated a little bit to get him there. And then they clinched the playoffs on March 20th. And so then they're kind of like playing out the string, but that's probably the wrong way to put it. Like teams that aren't going to make the playoffs are playing out the string, but for the Capitals, they're just waiting for the fun part from March 20th on. So I feel like they maybe let their foot off the gas a little bit. And in this league, and in almost any pro league at the top of a sport, if you let off 5%, 10% in terms of focus or mental preparation for a game or execution, you're going to get beat by your opponent. I mean, there's just not that big a gap between the Capitals and the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, there just isn't. And so if you're 5 to 10% down in any one of those categories on any given night, you can get embarrassed in this league. And that happened a little bit too often to them down the stretch. I do feel like this team is veteran enough still and has good enough leadership and tutelage from Spencer Carberry, who's probably going to be coach of the year. They're going to be able to find that switch, that proverbial switch, and flip it. But you'd rather go into the playoffs playing the way Montreal is playing rather than the way the Caps are playing. But I mean, there are so many extenuating circumstances. There are players being rested. There are some injuries. But I guess that's a way of saying the Caps better take care of business games 1 and 2 at home, because Montreal is young and fast and probably just naive enough to not be scared of the moment.
I think your answer, which you were, trying to kind of wrestle with what would happen if they don't perform well in the postseason, is the answer. Because, a first-round exit would be disastrous. It really would be, based on the regular season that they had and recent history. Like, I'm not saying that they have to win a cup this year for his legacy to be where everybody wants it to be. Obviously, a second cup with him at the age that he is, 7 years after the first one, is with, as you said, basically a whole new, group, would be super impressive. But the downside of getting beat in the first round for the 9th time in his career, that they have to avoid that. Have to, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it'd be pretty embarrassing and humbling if they were to lose in the first round to Montreal. I mean, and Montreal is essentially the Capitals from last year. I mean, they got in on the last day. They had to win their last game to get in. They are the 16th seed. The Capitals are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Like, on paper, the Capitals are better offensively, they're better defensively, they got better goaltending, they're better on special teams, they're better in the intangibles like experience and depth and coaching. Like, they check all of the boxes. It'd be a huge upset if they were. I think
they ended up with the exact same record too, or the exact number of points. I thought I read too, from as the Caps did last year.
Yeah, that's right. And like the Caps, that they also were playing their best hockey down the stretch. And so that's what makes them dangerous. And that's why, I think the Caps can't afford to think that they can go into this series and kind of feel their way into these playoffs. They are playing a young team, like I said, is probably just naive enough to not be scared of the moment, because they weren't supposed to be here. Like, their plan was to make the playoffs like next year or the year after. they're playing with house money. I hate that cliche, but it's true. They are here a year, maybe 2 years ahead of schedule. And so, and more importantly, they're playing well right now. 7-1-2 in their last 10 games.
You're worried about this.
Sure, their goaltender's one of the best goalies during that stretch.
Is he Halak?
He's not Halak, but any goalie can lock in and be really good for a week and a half.
Right.
That said, I'll go back to what I said about a minute ago. The Caps are better in every conceivable category. They just have to play up to their standard. They have to play up to their potential. If they play up to their potential, this is a 5 or 6 game series. If they don't, oh my God. Here we go again. So, yeah, we'll see.
We're talking to Tarek El-Bashir. All right, we'll get to the specifics of what they have to do to win this first round series against Montreal. But why do you think the odds makers are, less than optimistic about the Caps' ability to go on deep into the postseason? They're the 4th pick in most spots in the Eastern Conference, and they're like the 8th pick overall to win the Cup. Why is that?
Yeah, it's funny. The Caps always are a little disrespected by national media, by national pundits, by the analytics crowd. I think there are a number of reasons for that, and I think you outlined it just a couple of minutes ago when you said they've had a lot of first-round exits, right? They've had a lot of – they had that one magical year in 18. Short of that, they've had a lot of disappointment, and not just during the Ovi era, but even going back further than that. I think that works against them. I think that the way they score goals, and they scored a lot of goals this year. They were one of the best offensive teams. They rely on just having better hockey players than other teams. It's not necessarily that they're, barrage of scoring chances. They have guys who can snipe. And I think the analytics crowd, their numbers can't explain that adequately. And they don't have, and this is weird to say about a team that has Alex Ovechkin, but they don't have Draisaitl and McDavid at the top of the ticket. They don't have Kucherov and Point. They have, in my opinion, and this is why, Kevin, I'm more bullish on most people about the Capitals, because the delta between their top guys and their bottom guys isn't very big. And in the playoffs, that makes you really dangerous, because in the playoffs, you're not just, during the regular season, you play on Sunday afternoon, and you got a game on Tuesday with some travel mixed in. Yeah, you're preparing for Tuesday's opponent, but you're not really drilling down on that opponent. You're more worried about, okay, let's worry about how we're playing. And oh, by the way, guys, here's what they run on the power play. Here's how they kill penalties. Let's focus on doing our process right. In the playoffs, you are like, here are the lines we think we're gonna see. When things don't go well, here are the lines that Carberry then mixes things up to. And here's how we're going to shut these guys down. They really drill down on every little detail of your team game and even your personnel. And when you don't have 3 or 4 guys, okay, we shut those guys down, we're good. With the Capitals, okay, you shut down Carlson, you got Chychrun. You shut down Ovi, and you got Strome. You shut down Strome, and Pierre-Luc Dubois might get you. There's a lot of really good hockey players. And I feel like because they don't have those 3 or 4 guys, you can just focus on just shutting those guys down. Okay, we'll be okay. I think that's going to make them quite dangerous. For me, the big question mark is going to be goaltending. Charlie Lindgren is really good. Logan Thompson was a Vezina Trophy candidate until he got dinged up down the stretch. I don't really know what's up with him. I know he's been on the ice quite a bit here the last week, but I don't know if he's going to be ready to go. And what worked for this team, goaltending wise, was that rotation, was, having that internal competition, but also just, keeping guys fresh. They obviously can't do that, or aren't going to be able to do that if we don't know what Logan's status is going to be. So that's a little bit of a concern for me. But I would say they're off today. By tomorrow, we'll probably get a much clearer picture of what Logan's status is going to be going into game 1 on Monday night. If he's still kind of skating on his own after practice, then okay, well, maybe he's not going to be ready. But I think if he starts to join join his teammates and start doing some more stuff, then okay, well, all right, now we might be back to being pretty solid in goal.
All right. You've outlined some of the concerns and some of the things that you like. How do they biggest takeaway if they win will be what? Biggest takeaway if they lose will be what? And then give me your prediction.
Yeah. Okay. I would say the biggest thing for the Capitals to win would be to be true to themselves, the way they played this season, which is scoring a lot of goals, playing tough man-to-man D, and getting good enough goaltending. It worked for them all year. The pucks weren't going in the way they had would have hoped, or it had been happening early in the year, the last 2 to 3 weeks. I expect that to change once they realize these are games they have to win, and they can really dial in and like I said, bring that 5-10% focus, intensity, mental prep, whatever was lacking there while they were just kind of coasting. They can dial that back up. I think they win this series in 5-6 games. Where they will get into trouble, Kevin, is if they lose a game at home and then have to go on the road to Montreal, which is a big, loud, scary place.
And they'll be fired up. They haven't been in the postseason for a while,
God.
Right?
Yeah. During the COVID year, they made a run to the final, but that was the COVID year. I mean, when that building is full up with 22,000 fans and they're singing their soccer-like chants, and I mean, they know every single thing that's happening on the ice, and they react to every single thing that's happening on the ice. It's an intimidating place to play. If the Caps win both games at home and then go up there, okay, all right, they're going to figure this out and they're going to win the series. If it's 1-1 going up there, man, it might start getting a little tight on them. So I just think big picture, Kevin, I think that the Capitals would be well served by not being overconfident here, but they should also have a little bit of confidence knowing that they are the better team in every single category and should win this series, should be able to find a way to win this series. And, this is meandering a little bit here, but another thing that's been impressive about the Capitals, and I think this also might serve them well in addition to the depth of the team that I mentioned a few minutes ago, is they can win in all sorts of different ways. They can grind them out. They can outscore you. They can shut you down. However you want to play, the Capitals can figure it out. You just hope they can get out of their own way and do what they did from October to about early March or mid-March, and I think they'll be okay.
Well, you said to me many years ago, the postseason, you can basically describe it in one word: goalie. So we'll see how the goaltenders perform, and hopefully the Caps are healthy there. Thanks, Tarek, very much, as always.
Anytime, Kevin.
Tarek El-Bashir, everybody. A former athlete in town is still playing, which is surprising, but also got bit by something. That story next.
All right, last night, the Nats, yesterday, actually, the Nats lost 1-0. Trevor Williams got the start, pitched 5 innings, gave up 5 strikeouts, and gave up 1 long bomb to O'Neal Cruz. They will take on the Rockies tonight at 8:40 on 106.7 The Fan. The Caps closed out the regular season last night, lost 5-3 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Clay Stevenson got his first NHL start and saved 33 of 38 shots. After 38 years, Lee Corso has announced his retirement from broadcasting. He will give his final headgear pick on August 30th. And the NBA play-in continues tonight. The Heat will take on the Hawks at 7, and the Mavs will take on the Grizzlies at 9:30. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1. Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream, turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
If you've been thinking about new windows, my recommendation is Window Nation. Window Nation has a great deal going on right now. For every 4 windows purchased, you get 4 free with no money down, no payments, and no interest for 2 full years. So by the time you start paying for your windows, you're paying half price, and the year will be 2027. If you buy a house full of windows, they'll give you a free entry door. That's a free entry door if you buy a house full of windows. Window Nation has a 96% customer satisfaction rating, over 20,000 5-star reviews. They do it right. Their customer service is first rate. They'll give you a lifetime warranty on those windows. And it all starts with a fast, free in-home estimate by calling them at 866-90-NATION or heading to windownation.com. Mention my name. I promise you they'll take really good care of you. The other night, as in Wednesday night, Patrick Corbin, remember him after 5 seasons post-World Series, had a near 6 ERA, was 33-70 for the Nats from 2020 through last season. Well, he signed a $1.1 million deal in Texas, and he pitched really well the other night in a 3-1 win over the Angels. Went 5 1/3, pitched very well, but it was dicey that he was going to pitch at all going into the evening because he got bit by something and had a totally swollen ankle. They still haven't figured out what bit him, but the culprit of the swollen ankle was determined to be venom. There was a visible bite mark on his foot. The ankle was wrapped, and he went out and pitched anyway and pitched well. Maybe that was the secret, is we needed him on one ankle for the last 5 years. They did not say what bit him. I would imagine it was a spider. Typically, if there's a visible bite mark and they're talking about venom, it was some sort of spider. I guess it could have been a snake. He pitched well, though, in his second start this year in Texas. And currently, after the start the other night, his ERA is 3.86, and he is 1-1. Actually, he's 1-0. There was a non-decision in his first game. When we come back, Joe House from The Ringer will jump on with us. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Just a reminder that the show now streams on the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open up the app, type in Team 980, and hit the subscribe button if you don't mind. Also, hit the like button for us as well. The YouTube 980 Team 980 page. I'm on 10 to 1. Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Joining me right now is my good friend Joe House from The Ringer, at House from DC. He's a fan of all DC sports. We'll talk NBA playoffs. I know you have been thinking about those, and I can't wait for tomorrow. Actually, can't wait to see some of the games tonight. But I want to go back to Sunday at Augusta. Joe does an excellent gambling show for The Ringer and talks golf all the time at Fairway Rollins. So I don't know this. Were you a fan of Rory winning or not?
Huge fan of Rory winning. And I've been one of the guys, a Rory truther, for a full, half a decade. It's been a relationship between me and Rory that goes all the way back, 15 years or so, because the talent that he showed so early in his career, it felt like he could be a kind of rival to Tiger Woods, even though he was much, much younger. But with golf, different generations can compete against one another. And he was the only guy coming up through the ranks in that, sort of 2000 to 2010 timeframe where it felt like, you know what, he might actually give Tiger a little bit of a challenge. It was not really meant to be, for a whole variety of reasons, mainly Tiger's inability to stay healthy and all kinds of dramatic life events. But Rory's talent has been always unquestionable. It's just a matter of the 6 inches between his ears, Kevin. And we got the full Rory experience on Sunday in that regard, didn't we?
Oh, my God. So how did you what were the analogies of the up and down performance on Sunday before we get to just sort of the unbelievable weight that was lifted off his shoulders, but just the final round? Did you talk in terms of sports comparisons?
It's too hard because, the excruciating experience of it, where it's just the man and his golf clubs and planet Earth. Those are all the elements. It's hard to compare that Rory experience to things in other sports. We've had, champions that we've rooted for in our lives in different sports, but they've had to depend on their teammates to get there. Ray Bork for, in Boston, beloved, had to go to Colorado to get his ring. Similar, those kinds of guys who've had to leave their situations and go on to find the championship that they kind of deserved over the course of their career. But golf is so, it's just the guy and his clubs and whatever the golf course presents that makes it so unique and uniquely excruciating.
Yeah, it was, though. I mean, fair point. Individual sport versus team sport, but it was a situation of keeping both teams in the game simultaneously. A Jameis Winston or a Phillip Rivers kind of performance, which was thrilling, but for both sides. I'm curious, first of all, how did you feel going into Sunday after Bryson had drained that long putt to get to within 2 at 18 on Saturday? Did you think Rory was going to win going into the final round before it started?
I really did. I had a quiet confidence as Sunday arrived, and I woke up Sunday morning, and one of the things I did was, jump into the FanDuel Sportsbook and make a little bit of a wager on Rory in a head-to-head against Bryson. And a lot of that was because, well, there's two reasons. In the first place, it did seem like it was just going to be a match between Rory and Bryson. They had separated themselves enough that it felt like one of those two guys was the most likely winner. And then secondarily, Bryson was fighting his game all week. Nobody took more practiced shots on the range than Bryson DeChambeau. And kudos to the Masters for creating, giving all of us fans of the game the opportunity to see the guys on the range and all of the shots they took. Really fun. But I thought that Rory would handle Bryson, and I thought that meant that Rory would win.
It's always fun to watch you on the range, but that's another conversation altogether. What did you think after he doubled number one? Were you concerned at that point?
I was concerned, and I immediately, once again, started thinking about the potential for other winners. The way that Bryson got up and down, but the serious concern I had with Rory for that final round was if he had to rely on short game scrambling to get around the golf course, then he didn't really have a shot. Bryson is so far superior at that, and it was the thing that kept Bryson in the tournament the entire week. And we watched it live on the first hole where Bryson was able to get up and down, save par on number one, Rory with the double bogey, and it felt like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah. And then, we could go through the whole round, but I want to get to some other things. But 13 was, it was awful. I'll fast forward to 18. Look, I was rooting for him too. I think a lot of people were, and it was an emotional roller coaster ride all day long. First of all, I thought the Nats victory march, theme to the final hole was way too premature. We've all watched Rory so many times, bogey. I thought double bogey could be in play before his tee shot. But I didn't think he would make that putt. Did you think he'd make that putt 18 regulation before the playoff?
I did not. I did not think he was going to make that putt. After what he showed us on 13, and then he followed it up with the bogey on 14. It was like the most Rory experience ever to come back with a genuine eagle attempt on 15, and then a truly transcendent birdie on 17 that should have been the clincher. But when we got to 18, he hit the ball in the middle of the fairway, and your observation with Nance is so on the money. Buddy, let's just be quiet. That Rory McIlroy is full of shenanigans. Nothing is done with Rory McIlroy until the ball's in the hole. Let's just be quiet.
Yeah, I was surprised at that. He did not have a 2 or 3 shot lead. For me, and you're a much bigger fan, it sounds like. My stomach, when he stepped to the tee after Justin Rose put it in the fairway in the playoff, that was the one before the putt that won it. I was like, God, dude, just put it in play. Don't put it in the trap. Don't hit it OB to the right. And I was so nervous for him in that moment. Look, the final putt too, but where were you? I'm assuming you were about to get sick over the final 20 minutes of real-time golf.
Yeah, and honestly, I wasn't that worried about the tee ball off of the playoff hole, off of 18 once again, because he hit great tee balls all week on 18. The problem was when he gets to his number, it was 125 on the 72nd hole of competition, and he flared it right into the bunker. Now, why did he do that? Well, just nerves, just the 6 inches between his ears. So I wasn't worried about the tee ball. It was what's going to happen when he has a wedge in his hands and he has an approach on a number that he likes. Is he going to be able to execute it? Can he shut up whatever the demons are that are swimming around him and inside his brain and just go execute the way that he's capable of? And that wedge shot was impeccable, an all-timer. It will go down, I think, in it's not quite comparable to Bryson DeChambeau's shot out of the bunker in the U.S. Open, but in a playoff to knock it to 3 feet, that showed the true champion that Rory, that all of us who are Rory fans want him to be. And so I was not worried after he made that shot about the putt to win the tournament.
He did say it was a flatter lie than the one at the end of his round.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Sure.
I was still nervous. Look, it was 2.5, 3 feet. If he had missed that one, I don't know where we go from there. I think it's really bad moving forward, especially if he loses the tournament. But are you, and I'll wrap up the Rory conversation, are you a believer in, now that he's got that, taken care of after 11 years, that he's going to go on a run now?
I am. I do believe that. I think that there's nobody that's playing better golf than him in the world. It was the primary lead storyline into the tournament. No, if not now, when? Because he was playing so well. He had arrived for the first time in his entire professional career at Augusta National with 2 wins on U.S. soil. And, across all of the sort of measuring metrics, he's at the very top of performance. And so now that the mental part seems to be sort of under control, he's put that bit of bugaboo in the rearview mirror. There's no reason we immediately go to a golf course in Quail Hollow for the PGA Championship. That is one of his most comfortable venues of anywhere in the world. And so, is there any reason to think that he can't win? No. The U.S. Open at Oakmont, he certainly can excel there. And then the British Open at Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland, it will be a nice test of I'm just going to knock on wood that he remains healthy, because that's always a question mark. But if he's healthy and arrives at Royal Portrush, that will be a level of pressure that's going to be really interesting.
Talking to Joe House. Real quickly before I forget, Celtic City is excellent. Have you been watching it?
I have, and I was about to say thank you for that, but I didn't have anything to do with it.
I didn't know if you had anything to do with it. I know it's a Bill Simmons special, right. And I actually heard him interviewed on Mad Dog the other day, and it was really good. But it is really well done.
Yeah, one of the nice things about being pals with a guy who does documentaries like that is I do get to see advanced stuff and give some feedback, and I just get to sit and watch and talk through some things. And so I've seen the entire series. The thing for me that is an element that just makes me proud for my friend and seeing all of the reaction to it. It really is a history of the NBA. And if you're an NBA fan at all, that history, being reminded of it, revisiting it in this manner through the prism of the Boston team, it's pretty incredible.
Really well done. Recommend it if anybody hasn't seen it. And to Joe's point, it really is so much about not only the history of the league, but, during, times in which, it was about culture, certainly in the 60s into the 70s. It's really very well done. All right. Before we get to the NBA playoffs, who do you want your favorite football team to pick a week from last night?
It's kind of a crazy feeling, Kevin. I have no anxiety whatsoever as we approach this draft. I know it would be great to get something on the order of safety or cornerback, and I like the names that I'm seeing in those positions. Edge would be tremendous, but the true feeling, the true emotion I have coming into this is I trust our decision makers just so extensively that I don't think they're going to make a wrong decision. And so I want to improve the defense, and I feel like they're going to make a good decision in that regard.
Benefit of the doubt, Joe House, which is where I've been to a certain degree too. They've earned it, at least for now. I mean, somebody mentioned to me last week, I think somebody wrote me a letter just saying, look, Jaden was easy. That was the difference maker. I mean, without him, they're a 6-11 or a 7-10 football team, and anybody could have picked him at number 2. The interesting thing, Joe, is I think they would have picked him at number 1. I think they liked him more than any other quarterback, and they've said that, after the fact, but I think I knew that a little bit even going into the draft, that they were thrilled that they were going to be able to take him and not have the decision at number 1. All right.
What's funny to me, I don't think it was easy. There was a lot of folks that made great, compelling cases for Drake May. And I honestly felt like either one of Drake May or Jaden could have been a good selection. Now, there's a whole bunch of intangibles associated with Jaden that clearly separate him from both Drake May and Caleb. But, great job. And let's just build off of that track record.
Yeah, look, I mean, Drake May's story, none of these stories have been completely written. They just had one year. It's just that Jaden's year was all-time for a rookie. But those that love Drake May, and I didn't, I like Jaden a lot more, but they may not be wrong long term. We'll see.
Right. That's right.
All right, let's talk NBA playoffs, because I'll be honest with you. The East is fine. I'll pay attention, but I got the Celtics in the final. I don't even think they get tested. Do you?
Possibly by Cleveland, but Cleveland has to show a maturity that we haven't seen from them in postseason basketball. Now, I am a true Kenny Atkinson believer, the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I think that he, as much as anybody, is responsible for pulling out of Evan Mobley a level of play for Mobley that puts him in the conversation for all NBA teams. And the Cavaliers do have the size to match up with the Celtics, but my instinct is basically the same as yours, which is to pencil the Celtics into the being the Eastern representative in the NBA Finals.
All right, before we get to the West, the other day I did something that I basically do on an annual basis, because you know this, because you've got a lot of friends that are the same way. They don't love the NBA like they used to, and they certainly can't. They hate the NBA regular season, and I annually give just a suggestion. It's a strong suggestion that if you are a sports fan, the NBA playoffs are completely different than the NBA regular season. I think it's the largest gap of all of the sports that we watch, the four majors, between regular season and postseason. I don't even think it's close. And the game the other night between Golden State and Memphis was just spectacular, start to finish. I mean, Curry at 37, pouring in 37, 15 of the last 19, playoff Jimmy Butler, 38 points. I mean, it was just a sensational basketball game. And I love this time of year, and I know you do too, but do you agree with me, or do you think it's another sport that the divide, the gap between regular season and postseason, there's no bigger than in the NBA?
No, I definitely agree with you. Both baseball and hockey have tournaments where unexpected teams can get hot and go on run in those tournaments. But for the caliber of play, night in to night out, playoff NBA basketball is incomparable. And it looks absolutely nothing like regular season NBA basketball. And that isn't really, to me, a knock on regular season NBA basketball. The true richness of the NBA playoffs comes from the fact that the teams have to play each other a minimum of 4 games. And so you get to see these coaches and the organizations scheming and game planning for their opponent in a way that's not possible during the regular season. And that's where the real richness of the competition comes from, in my humble opinion.
I think that's part of it, but I would add that there's a sense of urgency that just never exists during the regular season. From start to finish, not just game to game, but within the game, from the opening tap until the end of the game. I was having this conversation with Scott, with Van Pelt the other night, and I just said, I don't even know how you truly evaluate NBA players during the regular season, because it's really hard when you don't know the level of effort that each team is giving. I mean, sometimes it's the back half of a back-to-back, and that's a different mindset and a different physical capability than you had maybe going into it. I just think this is the time of year when you get into not necessarily one-and-dones, but the feeling of a one-and-done, when you can truly evaluate.
I don't disagree with that. There are referendum games throughout the season where teams want to prove something to other teams. We saw that quite a bit with the Houston Rockets this season, with this young, fierce roster who, you would look at this up, had the best record against teams above 500 in the entire NBA. And it's basically because they were using all of these regular season games as measuring stick games for themselves. So there are those kinds of examples, but those are exception, and I don't disagree with you. I'm glad you shouted out SVP. You just reminded me. I got to give SVP some credit as well. It's already a bucket list anytime you're able to get down to the Masters, Kevin. And have you been?
I have. Just once, great. Though. Did you you go?
Well, look, I was there this year. I was down Monday to Friday. We did a lot of content from down there. It was really fun. But we did run into Scott up top at the
Yeah.
Great convening
But
where number 1 tee box and number 10 tee box come together. And he's a man of the people. He's holding forth. But I was there with my group, and he was just getting ready to walk a couple of luminaries in the butler's cabin. And he said, "Hey, guys, why don't you come with me?" And so you take the bucket list, and then you go a whole nother level of walking into Butler's cabin with Scott Van Pelt. And Scott was kind enough to take a picture of me and Simmons and the entire crew in Butler's cabin. I sat in the guest chair, not the Nance chair. Simmons sat in the Nance chair. I sat in the guest chair. But talk about an all-time bucket list item and SVP. Love that guy so much.
All right, let's get back to the West. We don't want his head to swell too much. All right. I cannot
big
wait.
Head.
I cannot wait for the West. And let's start with where you kind of left off before you started to talk about Scott, and that is with Houston. Golden State's a minus 180 to minus 190 favorite in this series. Do you think they should be?
No, that price is out of whack. And it's a price that if you told me this is going to be the sort of odds for the last 5 minutes of each game, and then we're inside sort of a clutch moment, that is to say, both teams are within 5 points of one another, and it's the last 5 minutes of the game. If you want to tell me that Golden State is a favorite of that order of magnitude under those circumstances, then yeah, I can kind of get my head around it, because I trust the Warriors to execute down the stretch in the clutch moments more than I trust the Rockets. The thing that has held the Rockets back this season has been their half-court offense, and especially at end of games, even though the Rockets have a very good record over the course of the season in these so-called, clutch games. But the problem for the Warriors is they have kind of 3 guys, 2 of which that are capable of scoring, but they are very thin. And Coach Steve Kerr has been showing what can only be treated as a lack of confidence in Jonathan Kuminga, in Brandon Podziemski. I mean, guys are sitting on the bench.
Kuminga didn't play the other night. I
understand. I don't know what's going on. It's playoff time. They need to in the first place, make sure that Draymond and Jimmy Buckets and Steph are ready. And in the second place, build up some confidence in these role players that you need, because the Rockets have wave after wave of young athletic talent, Kev.
They do, but it's, as you said, they're not great in the half court. And if these are close games, you end up trusting the experience this time of year, for sure.
Exactly. And that's
so
why
who are you picking?
I am going to pick the Warriors, because I'm going to pick against them in the next round. I think that the attrition I think this is going to be a long series, a minimum of 6 games, possibly 7 games. I like the Warriors to come out of it, but I think it's going to take so much out of them that the next round, potentially against the Los Angeles Lakers, I know the league is rooting for it. I'm prepared to take their opponent.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because it sounds like you're leaning Lakers, who are also, growing as a favorite over Minnesota. Who do you like and why?
I honestly think that the Timberwolves are going to give the Lakers a humongous challenge. The thing that you can't discount is where Luka Doncic is in terms of his own health and his own sort of getting back into the flow. We saw it took him a while. I mean, he came back after the trade deadline for the Lakers, still just working himself back into the mix. And there were really only 2 what we would call signature Luka games. He had a signature game against Oklahoma City, because I think the Lakers wanted to prove something to Oklahoma City. And then he scored 45 points in his return to Dallas, and it's kind of obvious how and why he would do that. But he's really the crucial linchpin to this entire breakdown. He has been a Timberwolves killer. He has been a Rudy Gobert killer in his career. But the Timberwolves are deep. They're big and they're deep. And the thing that makes the Lakers different from the Dallas teams that Luka played on is they don't have bigs that can crash to the basket the way that Dallas did. And those pick and rolls where Luka could just put the ball up at the rim, that's not going to be there for the Lakers. And so that's what makes this matchup is especially rich.
Yeah, can Minnesota play consistently big with Rudy Gobert on the floor?
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think it matters because they can play big with Naz Reid, and they can play big with Jaden McDaniels, and they can play big with who am I forgetting? They have enough kind of otherwise to
Randall.
To Randall, yes, exactly. Yeah, they have enough size that it's okay if the Lakers scheme to get Rudy off the floor.
All right, let's move to the series that I'm really intrigued by because of the way they have played down the stretch. Again, it's the regular season, but the big if Kawhi Leonard can stay healthy for 7 games and maybe beyond that, and Denver not playing well heading into the postseason. So how do you see Denver, LA, the 4 versus the 5, Denver with the home court advantage?
Well, it's obviously the starting point is what you just described, which is, can Kawhi be healthy? No team arrives in these playoffs playing better than the LA Clippers. Over the last 15 to 20 games, they're tops of the league in net rating and tops of the league in both defensive and offensive rating.
Awesome
and it's a
defensively. Again, regular
awesome
season, but they've been awesome defensively.
And so what makes this matchup so fascinating, I think the Clippers have the best head coach and bench in the entire tournament here.
Because of Van Gundy or because it's just Ty Lue?
Yes, both. The combination of those guys and the way that they can scheme, especially when they have a team where they're like, we need to win 4 games against this team. I trust those guys so much to create advantages for the Clippers. The Nuggets still have 4 guys that were on the team that won the 2023 NBA title, and that's pretty powerful. And they also have, Russell Westbrook, who you just can't play in the fourth quarter, but what he does in terms of coming off the bench with energy and force, and, he's got lots of playoff chops. The problem with the Nuggets is that when Jokic isn't on the floor, they're basically a 500 team, if that. And, they can't play Jokic 48 minutes. I bet they play him 44 minutes. I bet he doesn't play less than 42 minutes in any game. But the Nuggets do, on balance, I think, have an advantage on offense. But the Nuggets hit a real rough spot, so rough that it got their coach and their GM both fired, half a week ago. Playing defense. They were one of the worst defenses in the NBA over the last 30 games. And so how are they going to address that against a Clippers team that can score both inside and outside, especially with a healthy Kawhi?
We're talking to Joe House from The Ringer. So here's what bothers me about the Clippers. And I hear this about Ty Lue all the time, and I think Van Gundy's been a big plus for them. And by the way, guys, we're talking about Jeff Van Gundy, who used to be with Mike Breen, a part of the #1 broadcast team. And now he is on the bench with Ty Lue in LA. And they're doing a phenomenal job defensively. I've watched a lot of them down the stretch. And I remember the last time, even when Kawhi was healthy. I'm a massive Kawhi Leonard fan, always have been, even though there are a lot of reasons not to be a fan of him. But beyond that, I still see a team that relies far too much, Joe, offensively in the half court on ISO with Harden. Yep. And I just never trust, that's why I didn't trust Dallas last year. Look, they were playing a better team ultimately, and they got to the finals, but they just relied too much on ISO or, 2-man, 1-ball screen. That's it. And it actually looks uncomfortable at times to watch with Harden and 4 guys basically standing around unless Zubac is involved in the ball screen. What do you think?
Well, you're right. Although I think they did tap into something over these last 20 games. I mean, your complaint is well-founded. The pick and roll with Harden and Zubac has been a revelation this entire season.
He's
so much
good.
So that Zubac, he might make an all-NBA third team. I mean, that's how good he's been on offense and how the harmony with Harden has worked out. But Kawhi's arrival, you just can't, understate how impactful Kawhi's ability to penetrate, his mid-range game, which come playoff time, the entire NBA eschews the mid-range until it's time where you really have to start making baskets. And so that'll be a difference maker for Luka. If Luka knocks down inside the arc buckets, then look out for the Lakers. But the same is true for sure for the Clippers, and that's where Kawhi could really excel. And that creates then the opportunities for the three-point shooters on the Clippers in Norm Powell, in Bogdan Bogdanovic. Look for him. Chris Dunn. Let those guys, get some threes up. If they knock down their threes, then it's going to be a tough series for Denver.
Yeah, I think if the Clippers advance, and by the way, not just past this round, but perhaps even further, it's going to be about what they do defensively and how many turnovers they can force and how they can get out and run. So I've saved the team that had an unbelievable regular season, all-time regular season in terms of point differential, Oklahoma City. We know how they are. For those that don't follow it, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be the MVP this year. They're the number 1 seed. They won 68 games, and they'll have home court advantage in any series they play, including in the finals. So your belief level on Oklahoma City is where?
I am extremely high on Oklahoma City. And it comes down to me to the improvements that they made in the offseason to their roster. They just knocked it out of the park with the acquisition of Isaiah Hartenstein and the acquisition of Alex Caruso. And the Hartenstein acquisition especially, because that guy's basketball IQ is, I'm not going to say it rivals LeBron James, but he is such a smart player on both ends of the floor that it's a force multiplier. What I mean by that is it has an impact on a guy like Chet Holmgren. It frees up Chet Holmgren to be an inside-outside kind of player because Hartenstein is down there doing the dirty work and collecting the rebounds that must be collected for success in the playoffs. And that was the one element that was missing. It's a healthy Chet Holmgren and it's a healthy Hartenstein and it's Caruso on the perimeter, along with all of the dogs that Oklahoma City already has in terms of athletes and shooters and SGA playing at the MVP level. I think Oklahoma City, it's right that they are the presumptive favorite. And I'm looking forward to them, getting into that matchup with whoever wins the 4-5 between the Clippers and Denver, because that will be the first true test. There will be no test for Oklahoma City whatsoever in the 1-8 matchup, either Dallas or Memphis. But next round is where it starts to get interesting, Kev.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, although if Dallas wins tonight, they're going to just ask maybe Dallas fans to say, why don't you just pay attention to us, like the guys you actually have? It was impressive the other night. I'm actually a little bit surprised Memphis is a 6.5, 7-point favorite tonight because of the absolute war they played Tuesday night and John Morant's health. I don't know what it is heading into tonight. All right. We both have Boston in the finals. Who faces them in the finals, and then who doesn't cut down the nets? Who wins the championship?
Wow. I think it's going to be Boston. I think Boston it's going to be, I think Oklahoma City will get there, and then Boston, with all of their playoff experience, will ultimately prevail. I hate to say it, but I think it's a repeat for Boston.
I have a plus 900 on Golden State from the Jimmy Butler trade on to win the West.
Well done. You just need them to get that.
Not yet, and I will have an opportunity to hedge, especially if they can win this first round series. But I think you said something like I saw a team that relied on 2 players the other night with not much of a bench that I could certainly see in a long series them just running out of gas. I mean, Steph looked exhausted at the end of the play-in game the other night. But it's going to be fun to watch all of this.
Always.
Thanks for doing this.
Always a pleasure. My favorite bet, by the way, of all, and the price has tightened up a little bit. I love Milwaukee over the Indiana Pacers in the 4-5 in the East. Giannis hasn't gotten to play in the playoffs these 2 previous years. Look out. Make a big investment in all the Giannis props as much as you can tolerate with your bankroll. I think he's going to absolutely go off against the Pacers.
I can't believe the Pistons are such an underdog where they are right now, and it's actually
That's
gone
a
up
New
since
York
the
tax.
opener.
That's the crazy people in New York,
Yeah.
all with the irrational exuberance. I like Cade making a little bit of a statement here, especially in Madison Square Garden, but ultimately the Knicks are too deep for Detroit.
You're the best. I'll see you soon. Thanks.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Joe House, everybody at House from DC. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So I said something on the show yesterday that a lot of you responded to, and I'll just read this from Tony. Tony wrote, "Thank you for bringing the name back up again yesterday. I'd love to be back at RFK with the hydraulic shaking seats, but 100 times out of 100, I'd stay in Landover to bring back Redskins. How about both RFK and the Redskins? Please don't stop talking about the Redskins. Please. We lost our name and brand. And for what? What was accomplished? Absurd. I don't live in the DC area anymore, but would buy season tickets and all the merchandise if the Skins come back. I won't buy one piece of merch with this dumb name." It's been a while since we've talked about the name. Yeah, I brought it up, I think, yesterday, actually, on my podcast with Tommy, with Livero. Because there's still some risk and there's still some hurdles to clear to get to RFK. And we had Mark Seagraves on the show yesterday talking about some of those hurdles. First of all, it's got to pass city council. Secondly, there's going to be a lot of zoning related issues. There are going to be pushback groups, whether they are the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people, or just groups in town that want to bring this to a public vote, which would not be good news for the team and for the mayor to get a deal done, because typically those public votes don't go in the direction of yes on stadium. Although I thought it was interesting that Mark brought up with me on the show yesterday that even if there were a public vote that went against zoning for anything other than residential, which would kill the stadium, that the city council can actually trump that public vote. I didn't know that, but he had mentioned that in our conversation yesterday. So there are still some hurdles left, including currently the federal government. There's this $410 million budget cut congressional mandate that they've got to deal with for the budget for 2025 before they can even get to 2026. And who knows what the federal government will impose moving forward on the city. And I think in the midst of that conversation, I said something to the effect of, well, maybe in 2025 with the current president, maybe there would be a quid pro quo. We'll make it really easy for you to have the stadium at RFK if you bring back the old name. But in all seriousness, the old name's gone, Tony. The issue is whether or not there will ever be a change to the existing to something other than Commanders. And Josh Harris made it very clear a couple of months ago that that's not happening. They feel like right now, off of a 14-win season, 12 regular season, 2 playoff wins, both, by the way, on the road, 60 minutes away from the Super Bowl, it gave them the path to sticking with the current name. And it gave them the path to avoid what would be a very difficult process anyway, and expensive. Now, many of you, reached out to say, if they're going to spend $2.5 billion to move back to D.C., it's certainly not $2.5 billion to change the name. No, it isn't. It wouldn't be anywhere near that. But for the time being, it's over. Like, do I think it's over like forever? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think the business will dictate that. I have no idea where they are on season ticket sales for next year. But I'd be very surprised. And if I were them, I would be somewhat mystified, if not concerned, if they didn't sell out the 61,000 seats that they have available next year for the season after what they just accomplished in 2024. And I think that would be a bit of an indication about something that we've talked about here before. We're in a bubble. The tent is much bigger and much more accommodating of many, many more people than it was a year ago, certainly more than 2 years ago, but it's still a bubble. A lot of people haven't come back. The lack of sellouts last year is proof of that. The lack of local television ratings numbers that were significantly different from the year before, and they weren't significantly different from the year before, is an indication of that. And that all comes back to the name, period. All comes back to the name. But again, not an easy solution, not an obvious solution when Redskins is not part of the solution, not to mention the hard, brass tacks truth of those of us that care, they may not care as much about what we think, because our lifetime value to them isn't what someone who is 25, 28, 30, or 13 years old is to them. That's just part of the long-term revenue prospects. We're not going to be around as long as those that are under 30 and care less about this name issue. I'm not saying everybody under the age of 30 doesn't care about it, because I've heard from many of you under the age of 30 that do care about it. But the percentage of people over 40 that care about the name is much higher than the percentage of people under 30 who care about the name. And the people under 30 have greater lifetime value to ownership than the people not necessarily over 40, but certainly over 50 do. So, yeah, in terms of like the question that Tony asks and answers on his own, 100 times out of 100, I'd stay in Landover to bring back Redskins. Yeah, I think I would too. I've said this before, that winning is number one. And I think it should be number one for them, and part of that is just changing the overall, modus operandi of the organization, which they have. I mean, they've gone from an incompetent and a gross and mean-spirited organization to a smart, competent, and embracing organization. So far, that's the experience we have with this ownership group. They're much smarter than the previous group. They are much more interested in sort of the community and, by the way, winning, understanding that winning is the most important thing, not marketing a few big name stars in the offseason. Now, some of you would say, yeah, all of that is true with one exception. They ignored the majority of fans and what they thought about the name. And that hasn't changed, by the way. I love some of you a lot, but when you say people don't care, you're ignorant. You're an idiot, actually, and you're not paying attention. You are very disengaged from everything, including, the polling, including the private surveying that the team did that got leaked. Overwhelmingly, the large percentage of people who call themselves fans care about the name issue. This is not a niche issue at all. It may be one day with a Super Bowl or two, but it's not today. I think one of the things, though, to really keep an eye on, and we'll see what happens, is where they are in season ticket sales. Because 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10 in the NFL, if you don't have sold out season tickets and you go 12-5 and win 2 playoff games and nearly get to the Super Bowl, the following season, you are sold out across the board, especially when your capacity is as low as Washington's is now. I think that's an interesting thing to watch. And I don't know. Maybe they have sold out for the upcoming season. I don't know if they have or haven't. I would think that if they had sold out, that'd be a press release by now. All right. I do want to tell you about this show and what it's brought to you by today. It's brought to you by the Maryland Vehicle Theft Prevention Council. Maryland drivers, did you know a vehicle is stolen every 16 minutes in the state of Maryland? The key to preventing theft is in your hands. Lock your car, take your key, use an anti-theft device. Learn more about vehicle theft prevention at mdauthotheft.org.
All right, the Washington Nationals lost yesterday by a score of 1-0. O'Neal Cruz was the lone home run. They take on the Rockies tonight at 8:40 on 106.7 The Fan. The Caps lost by a score of 5-2 last night in their season closer. Alex Ovechkin notched number 897, finishing third in the NHL with 44 goals, behind just Leon Draisaitl and William Nylander. Former Washington National Patrick Corbin picked up a 3-1 victory last night versus the Los Angeles Angels. He nearly missed the start due to a suspected spider bite. Manager Bruce Bochy said he could hardly walk when he came into the clubhouse. After 38 years, Lee Corso has announced his retirement from broadcasting. He will give his final headgear pick on August 30th. And the NBA play-in continues tonight. The Heat take on the Hawks at 7 p.m., and the Mavs take on the Grizzlies at 9:30. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Earlier in the show, I gave you 3 players I'd be surprised if Washington selected in the first round. I will circle back to that in a few minutes and ask you who you don't want them to pick if you've got somebody specific in mind. It could be a position group. It could be a specific player. Who don't you want to see Washington select if they stay at number 29 in the first round? 301-230-0980. It could be a position group as well. So you could say, I hope they don't take a running back, or I hope they don't take a wide receiver, or I hope they don't take this player or that player. 301-230-0980. And I'll go back to what I opened the show with, 3 players I'd be surprised if they pick them. And then I'll give you a player that I don't want to see them select. But Matt Miller and Jordan Reed with ESPN put out a list of 2 potential players for each team in the first round. And Matt Miller's pick that fills a big need for Washington, running back Travion Henderson, Ohio State. And he writes, trading for left tackle Laramie Tunsil and wide receiver Deebo Samuel Sr. took care of 2 big needs, but Washington is still missing a true game changer at running back. Henderson has elite hands to catch passes from Jaden Daniels, and his big play ability is something this unit lacks. By the way, just throw in, all right, if you don't know this about Travion Henderson, this is a character plus. This is a guy that they will love in terms of his leadership ability. He is the perfect culture fit for Washington. Do I think Travion Henderson is too early for number 29 overall? I actually think if there is a back that should go in the first round after Ashton Genty, I would understand if it's Henderson. I mentioned earlier in the show, I'd be surprised if Washington took Hampton from North Carolina. Henderson, Matt Miller's pick for Washington at 29. And then Jordan Reed wrote the pick that gets the best value is Shamar Stewart. So they've got a need pick, Travion Henderson, a best value pick, Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M. We'll get into this more on Monday, but Shamar Stewart is one of those, who the hell knows? Everything about him athletically says, freak, this guy's going to be really good. And then the production last year was 1.5 sacks. 1.5 on a very good defensive Texas A&M team. I think that I don't think he'll be there, first of all. I really don't think Shamar Stewart ends up being there when Washington picks at 29. And I guess if he got to 29, you'd have to consider that to be a value pick. But man, 1.5 sacks. Where's the production? 4.5 career sacks on 692 career pass rush snaps. I mean, he's an athletic freak. He's explosive. He's got long arms. There's a lot there that you look at and you say, wingspan, the whole thing. But production, who knows why he didn't produce. I think that's always a bit of a red flag. And look, he was needing to produce at the best of the best SEC opponents. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Who don't you want to see them pick? It can be a player or it can be a position group. I will also come back and give you the 3 players I'd be surprised if they selected. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, we are now streaming on the Team 980 YouTube page. Open up the app, type in the Team 980, hit the subscribe button for us, please, and also hit the like button for us as well. I'm streaming 10 to 1. Craig Hoffman on the Team 980 is streaming from 4 to 7. Is there a player or a position you don't want Washington to select in the first round next Thursday night if they stick there at number 29 overall? I'm going to get to my answer on that and what I talked about at the Open. 3 players I'd be surprised if they took in the first round. I do, overall kind of have this thought that there's still something looming between now and the draft. I think something will happen with Trey Hendrickson. I'm not predicting that it'll be Washington, but I think something's going to happen before the draft. If they're going to trade him, Cincinnati, they have to do it before Thursday. It's got to happen over the weekend or on Monday or Tuesday. We don't see the big trades, other than picks typically on draft day itself. Some of those big moves involving big name players happen before the draft. So just keep that in mind. I think there's a chance Cincinnati retains him by paying him, but I think something breaks on Trey Hendrickson between now and Thursday. We shall see. And if it's Washington giving up a lower price demand because the draft is approaching and teams waited Cincinnati out, and Cincinnati would prefer to trade Trey Hendrickson to, an NFC team. We'll see. But remember, Washington doesn't, beyond the first round, have a ton of dry powder. They don't have a third rounder. They have a second rounder. That would clearly be a minimum of what Cincinnati would be looking at, but it's number 61 overall. It's towards the end of the second round. So I don't know that Washington ultimately will have enough in this upcoming draft to win that battle with other teams if Cincinnati drops its price. So I talked about something at the beginning of the show that I want to go back to because it sort of dovetails into the answer on who I don't want them to pick. Or a position group that I don't want them to pick. But there are 3 players, and I talked about them at the beginning of the show, that I would be surprised if Washington selected. And without spending as much time as I did in the open to the show, and you can go back and listen to it, I would be surprised if they took Tennessee defensive end James Pierce Jr. I'd be surprised because there are significant red flags on the player's work ethic, and there are a couple of others as well. But the biggest concern about Pierce Jr. isn't the overall talent. It is whether or not he loves football. There's a quote from an NFL scout in Dane Brugler's breakdown of the draft. Quote, "I need to be convinced that he loves this," closed quote. That is an absolute, you hear that and you couple it with some of the off-field issues he's had. None of them have been major traffic incidents, speeding, suspended license, not providing insurance, dumb stuff that a lot of dumb young people and even some older people do every once in a while. But there were discussions about James Pierce Jr. and his work ethic before, the intense buildup to the draft. He had missed out on some workout days for Tennessee last year in the offseason. You have to be convinced, if you love the player, that he loves the game, that he's going to have that level of work ethic. And we know what they were looking for last year. They were looking for workers, high character people, guys in the locker room that would fit their culture. I'd be surprised if Washington selected James Pierce Jr. with a first-round pick. I'd be surprised if Washington took Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina, in the first round. I like the player. I do. And I know that I've even mentioned that I thought he was worthy of a first-round pick, but I spent a lot of time in the last couple of nights trying to get a little bit ready for next week. So at least it sounded like I knew what I was talking about to a certain degree. Keep in mind, we don't know anything really about the stuff that we can't see. We're not involved in the interviews. We're not involved in making calls to coaches and to friends and family members about the player. But to me, Omarion Hampton is a really good back. I like him, but he's not the elite back that I think you have to feel the player is to select that player in the first round at the running back position. Ashton Genty is. He's the one in this draft. Travion Henderson has the kind of game-breaking talent, not to mention the overall incredible culture fit, which he does and will have. And I'm not saying Omarion Hampton has anything negative about him. In watching a lot of Hampton over the last 24 hours, he doesn't have the open field wiggle. He doesn't have the football breakaway speed. I know he ran 4.4 something at the combine. He's a big dude. You know, he's 220, 225 pounds. And he's 6 feet. You know, I don't think he's got the vision. I don't think he's got bad vision. I think he runs a bit too upright. He's not Ashton Genty. I'd be surprised if they took Omarion Hampton in the first round. To me, he's not a first-round back. Doesn't mean that somebody won't believe that he is. He's got a lot of strengths. I mean, once he gets going downhill, he is he's a horse, and he's durable. But there's, if I'm going with a back in the first round, when there's daylight, he needs to be able to score. Okay, I don't need an 18-yard run out of some daylight with a broken tackle along the way. For a first-round back, I want to know that it's over, that safeties better have the exact angle or he's running right by him. I don't see that with Hampton. He's not Saquon Barkley. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not an elite back. Travion Henderson has some elite capabilities. I'd be surprised if they selected a guy like Hampton at number 29 in the first round. And then wide receiver-wise, even though I've loved this player as a college football fan, I would be surprised if they took Luther Burden III. Netting it out, there's a lot of Jahan Dotson in Luther Burden. There is this incredible talent and separation ability and playmaking ability. And there's also something that Burden has in him that Dotson never shook out of, which is why they dealt him. He's not, a finish out every play guy. He is occasionally a take a play off if the play isn't designed to come to him. And that's what Dan Quinn told you in advance of them trading Jahan Dotson. I've used the basketball analogy. He wants guys that will dive on the floor for loose balls. That was never Jahan Dotson, and I bet they'll view Luther Burden III the same way. So 3 players that I'd be surprised they take: James Pierce, Hampton the running back, and Luther Burden the wide receiver. Now, in terms of who I don't want to see them take in the first round. They've done a lot of work in the offseason, and they've added a lot of defensive players. I'd prefer the best player available. On some level, though, I hope it's not a wide receiver. I think there's depth to the wide receiver class, A. And B, I think we saw last year that with Terry and with Noah Brown when he was healthy, and now they've added Deebo Samuel, and we're hoping on Luke McCaffrey. Michael Gallup, I guess, will have a chance as a stretch the field guy. Like, my preference would be that the best player on the board, obviously it won't be a quarterback, or I don't think it'll be a pure left tackle. But I think my preference would be, I've seen what they can do with average outside of Terry at wide receiver, with scheme and with quarterback. I'd love to add a real backfield threat. And I think in Deebo, you've added a weapon, period, whether it's in the backfield, whether it's in the slot, whether it's, out wide, whether it's in motion, fly sweeps, bubble screens, etc. So I think that I'll trust them if the best player on the board is a wide receiver. I will. But I would be disappointed if the best player available is a wide receiver. and they ended up taking that position. 301 230 0980. 301 230 0980. Is there a player or a position that you don't want to see them select in the first round overall? Phone lines are open. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to you. Max will answer the question when we come back. I've given you 3 players that I would be surprised if they took at number 29 overall. And then position-wise, I think I'd be a little bit disappointed if the best player available on the board was a wide receiver. I think they've already proven they can scheme it up and they can scheme people open with the talent they have, and they've added to it in the form of Deebo Samuel. I hope it's something defensively. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Who don't you want Washington to pick in the first round next Thursday night? It can be a position group. It can be a specific player. 301-230-0980. Ben Standing, by the way, will join us at 12:35. Max, do you have an answer to the question?
Don't want would be it would shock me if they went safety, because I keep seeing Nicky Minwari get mocked to us. I keep seeing it more and more as we get closer to the draft. There's a guy that I have my eyes on next year that I would do backflips for this team to draft, and that's Caleb Downs from Ohio State. He's a monster. So safety would shock me. That's pretty much the big one. But certain wide receiver, like I think all the wide receivers that are kind of at the top, like Matthew Golden would shock me. I don't think that they're going to go that way. I think if they were going to draft a receiver, I'm going to keep banging the drum for Emeka Egbuka, but he's like the only receiver I would see them taking a chance on at the top or the bottom of the first round. But I mean, edge, it feels locked up. I would like for them to take Ezeraku or something like that, but edge is kind of where I see them going. But I have a feeling that we're going to hear a lot of calls on people not wanting Shamar Stewart. That's my guess at where the public lies.
the lack of production.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious as to whether or not he'll even get there. By the way, I've watched now a lot of Donovan Azaruko from Boston College, and I'll talk about him next week. There is a lot to like. There's also a bit of a concern. All right, 301-230-0980. For me, I think I'm at the point where I hope best player available, which is what they should select at 29 overall, as long as it's not a quarterback. Or a pure left tackle or a center, and it won't be. But I think that wide receiver, we've already seen their ability to scheme people open and be productive in the pass game with the quarterback that they have. And I would actually love to see a top flight back in their backfield. But I'm pretty much not going to hate anything because there is a level of trust in them that I have. All right, let's start with our guy Steve in Houston. We haven't talked to Steve in a while. What's up, Goon?
What's up, Thug Sizzle? How you feel, man?
What's up?
Hey, let me be a little out of order here, real quick. Yesterday, I heard you about the RFK thing. 2 seconds, Kevin. My brother and I, dude. Let me tell you what game we went to when the Skins played. What was that? Detroit. So my brother and I, we leave RFK, right?
Detroit in the NFC Championship game in 91?
Was that the game when Darryl Green got an interception at the end?
No, that's a regular season game. That's into the mid 90s. You picked one off in overtime and scored.
Exactly. But us two big goofs, what we did, my boy Jaron and I, Archbishop Carroll, salute line.
That's my father's alma mater.
I know that. That's why I had to plug that in real quick. So we're leaving the parking lot. We're over there off of Bennett Road. We hear the stadium erupt. And we're like, dude, are you serious? We get home. We we wait, see everybody come out screaming and yelling, Redskins won. I said, dude, and at that point, I'm staying to the end. Like they say, it's not open until the fat lady sings. So that was my quick RFK moment from yesterday.
1995. I thought it was mid to late 90s. 1995, Darryl Green in overtime picks off Scott Mitchell, the lefty, and returns it for a touchdown to win it 36-30. All right, answer the question that we're asking.
Yes. I was talking to Max and the same thing. Shamar Stewart, all of the measurables, workout warrior, the whole nine, but just the production, I think only 4.5 sacks last year at Texas A&M. It just doesn't make sense. I would be very afraid, nervous, concerned if they were to pick him, because that just seems like they're leaning towards, potential and upside. But I have one, and I know we signed Kinlaw. You know who I think would be an interesting decision, Kevin? If Derek Harmon from Oregon fell at 29. Yeah. I wonder what Peters would do then, because he's if you watch his tape, Derek Harmon is really good from Oregon. And if they have him rated high, how would that work? And I've always been curious if they got a D tackle rated and like a wide receiver equally rated.
I've actually considered that as a possibility. Like if the best player on the board is a true, inside technique, inside defensive tackle player, would they take that player? I think you do have to consider that this could be Daron Payne's final season in Washington. So if it is a D tackle and that is clearly the best player on the board, I don't think they'll hesitate. So if a Derek Harmon fell, that's a possibility. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, go ahead.
Big guy, how you doing, man?
What's
Hail
up?
to the W.
Yep.
Ain't nothing much, man. Ain't nothing much. No, I'm pretty on board with what you're saying. I think receiver position would be my least favorite pick. And along the same lines of what you're saying, like Jaden, that's how you can tell one of the greatnesses of Jaden Daniels is he elevates the receivers around him. Exactly. Come on. Noah Brown, OZ. And just take it back to that Atlanta game with OZ. I mean, OZ was looking like Alvin Harper out there.
I don't know about Alvin Harper. He's much smaller than Alvin Harper. Wasn't Alvin Harper like 6'4"?
What I'm saying is he was a dominant number 2 in that game. Just for that game,
right.
we remember we needed a number 2, and he elevated him to a dominant number 2. But personally, I think we're getting confused on edge rusher. I don't think they're looking for an edge rusher. I think the word we need to use is they're looking for a defensive end. I think they're looking for
I agree. That's a really
Rice type player.
I agree. You have to get somebody who can first and foremost stop this team from giving up 8 and 9 yard runs, on that C gap or outside of it. But you want that player to be a pass rusher too, because you did lose 10.5 sacks last year.
Right. And that's why I said a Simeon Rice type player. But in saying that, if they just wanted an edge rusher, they would have threw that little extra couple million and brought Fowler back. But they didn't because they didn't just want a one-way player.
Well, they couldn't play him when they got behind against Philly.
Right. So I don't know Stevenson's measurables as far as his height and weight, though. But if he's a true defensive end, I wouldn't be surprised if they did take him at that spot if he was still there. But the player,
what player did you just mention?
What's his name? Stevenson. Who's the guy that everybody's saying they don't want, the defensive end? The one Max just brought up earlier. And
Shamar Stewart.
He didn't want.
Shamar Stewart. From A&M.
Yeah, Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, he's got no production.
Hey, the butcher. That's me. My fault.
Yeah.
But the guy I personally want for this draft is I want Travion Henderson, Ohio State. Not only is he a game breaker, he's good in pass pro. He's Clinton Porter-esque in pass pro. I think that's the one position, one player that will boost or elevate the offense without, having to lean on. Well, Jaden Daniels is always going to elevate, but that's the guy I want. Travion Henderson, man. I take it off.
We'll do the who do you want next week. Thanks for the call, Paulie. But right now, what don't you want, position wise, or who don't you want, player wise? 301-230-0980. Sabah is calling in. Been a while since we've heard from Sabah. Sabah, go ahead.
Hey there, Kevin. Okay, can I chime in about the name after I talk about who I don't want?
No, we're not doing the name right now.
Okay, well, I think it's a huge topic, but okay.
I know, but it's always a huge topic with you. It's a huge topic for me too, but we're going to stay focused right now. Is there a player or a position that you don't want them to select in the first round?
Yeah, don't want them to select Travis Hunter at all. I don't want somebody to tell me what
you don't want who
before he even shows up. Travis Hunter. I don't want nothing to do with him.
Well, you're not getting Travis Hunter. We're talking about players that would be available at 29. He's the best player in the draft. He's one of the best players we've seen in years.
I'm answering it. Then I don't want any running back in the first round not named Omarion Hampton because he is LaDainian Thompson. He ran behind a sucky offensive lineman. They were nothing. And when he is in the open field, he is gone. He is going to be better than Saquon Barkley is to Hurts. He'll be better than that to Jaden. because they both have breakaway speed. We will be unstoppable on offense if we get Omarion Hampton. And he also is durable. That Javante or Jonte guy, he's too physical. He's going to get hurt. Omarion Hampton is LaDainian Thompson, and he's elite. He is elite.
I don't see Hampton the same way.
He's got a perfect mixture of power and
I don't see Hampton the same way, and I like him, and I think he's going to be a good NFL back, but I don't see any similarities to Saquon Barkley's breakaway speed. Not even a little bit.
He's LaDainian Tomlinson. That's who he is, a future Hall of Famer.
Okay.
You book it right now, buddy. I don't want to run it back if it ain't him.
If you promise me he's LT, we'll take him. Thanks, Sabah. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Let's go to Kevin. Go ahead, Kev.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you for taking my call. Well, although I don't want to lighten the pants, pass rush only defensive end because we need an edge setter, that's not my number one concern and thing I don't want to see drafted. But let me just set it up. Look what the Eagles did last offseason. They had weaknesses at corner. They go get Mitchell and DeJohn in the draft. They had weakness at running back. They go get Barkley. They had issues in the linebacker core. They get Vaughn. And why did they do that? Because they're in the Super Bowl window. Even though they had that collapse at the end of a season ago, they were still in the Super Bowl window. They went for things they needed to do and have to win a Super Bowl. And I feel like we've taken bets on Samuel and Tunsil, and I think they're smart bets because we need those players to win a Super Bowl. What we don't need to win a Super Bowl is another wide receiver. Okay, we don't. If they draft wide receiver, I will have a fix. If you go back to 1980 and our first-round wideout picks, that's the last good one we did. That was Art Monk. Since then, let me read off this disturbing list: Desmond Howard, Michael Westbrook, Rocket Rod, 50-50 Gardner. Dotson and Dotson. Do I need to go on? It is a heavy bust pick, that position, just like quarterback. No, do not go for wide receiver. Hell, I'm thrilled we've got McLaurin and Samuel, and I think Luke's going to take a step up. We got Noah Brown back, and maybe Gallup can take the cap off the D. That's the last thing we need to fix. So I'm very strongly against taking a wide out in the first round.
Remember, Philly went back-to-back years taking wide receiver, and they really screwed it up in 2020 with Jalen Reagor from TCU when Justin Jefferson was on the board. I'm with you. I think that what we learned last year about Cliff and obviously about the quarterback is they can scheme it up. They did it with a lot of, average players other than Terry, and they've added Debo. And we still don't know what Luke McCaffrey can do. We do know he can get open. So I'm with you on that. I would be disappointed if the best player available on their board was a wide receiver. But if it were, and it was not even close, then I would absolutely be on board with it. So, if Igbuka is the best player on their board by miles at 29, they should take him, period. But I'm with you. I hope it's not that position.
It's too risky. I just feel like what the Eagles did is they addressed all their major weaknesses. We still have
they traded back to get the second corner with our team.
However they did it.
I agree.
They filled the holes.
Yeah. Yep. But it probably was the best player on the board when they selected Quinyon Mitchell. And I guarantee you Cooper DeJean was the best player on everybody's board when he was taken at whatever number that was in the second round when they traded with Washington to get up to that spot.
Kevin, what did we get by giving up the pick that got them DeJean? I mean, did we get Senate? I mean, what did we get? Because I'd like to trade it back.
We got the extra second round. We got the extra second round pick. We got Sinnott. Sandristil was our own pick. Sinnott was Newton was our own pick. Sandristil and Sinnott. We got Sandristil and Sinnott, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So if we got Sandristil, then okay. But my point is, if it were Sinnott and another player that wasn't Sandristil, I'd want to.
No, it was Sandristil and Sinnott. We traded back with Philly and picked up. It was like 50 and 53 or something like that. Whatever it was. I'm pulling it up right now. It was 50 and 53. And we got Johnny Newton. We had 3 second-round picks last year. But we gave up 40, and we gave up, I think, a fourth round or two or something to Philadelphia. But whatever. They got an excellent player. We got an excellent player in Samerstill.
And we don't know what we've got with Sinnott. Maybe he's going to blow up.
It's 1 year.
Maybe Luke's going to blow up.
Yeah, most players
too.
don't show what they are as rookies. Yeah. Thanks, Kev. Let me move on real quickly. Let's go to Chris in Hyattsville. Chris, quickly, go ahead.
Hey there. I said to your call screener that number one, nobody on offense. We're fine. Okay, we can find rookie free agents, whatever else. I trust our offensive coordinator to scheme things up properly. We need a lot of help on defense everywhere. Number two, your prior caller was right. I remember the NFC Championship like it was yesterday. Darrell Green picked off Detroit on their last possession, ran it back about 30 yards.
Yeah, but he was talking about in the overtime game winner. That was against Scott Mitchell in Detroit in '95. He did have a pick six in the championship game. Yes, he did. But that was a 41-10 win.
No,
he was talking about the game winner, I think. I thought he was. Maybe I'm wrong.
No. The one in the NFC Championship game was where he picked it off on Detroit's last possession.
It was like a deflected ball. He picked it off and ran it back.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
The interception against Scott Mitchell in overtime was a regular season game, and they won on his pick six in OT. I thought that's what Steve was referring to. But you might be right.
I immediately interpreted it as he was talking about how to kind of close out the game because I remember that as well. Okay.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Dre in Landover. Dre, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on?
What's up, Dre?
All right, to start off, I'm gonna go ahead and try to answer the question, but I do want to touch on the fact I keep hearing a lot of it feels like arrogancy. We picking 29. And so people saying they don't want Stewart or they don't want Pierce or this and that and the other. Basically, it's not our decision. It depends on who's on the board. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you got those choices between the Stewart and the Pierce.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, these are hypothetical questions based on, the consensus of the kinds of players that will be available at 29. But we're all guessing at this point.
I'm just saying. I hear a lot of people saying, "Well, we don't." They took James Pierce off the board due to character concerns, and I'm saying that based off of last year, the culture was set. That was one of the best coaches I've seen in this organization in over 2 decades. So I feel like with Coach Quinn, they can take on a guy like James Pierce or Mike Green or whoever. But all right, let me answer the question. I'm going to, at first I said receiver position totally, but I'm going to go with Emeka Ibuka because I feel like I think this team needs somebody that can be a deep threat. And I feel like you can get a slot, basically what he is, a slot receiver. You can get that in the third or fourth or whatever, late undrafted guy. I feel like this team really needs somebody that can, go deep like a Matthew Golden. If he's there, I would take him at 29, actually.
All right. I mean, by the way, back to your first point. It's an interesting point. I would just tell you that I think this is a team moving forward, even in a championship window opportunity, that they're not going to go with flip the coin players when it comes to character. I don't think they're going to do that right now. I mean, if you told me 5-6 years down the road, they've won a Super Bowl, they've lost one, and there's another window before they're going to have to pay Jaden another massive deal, and there's a corner out there that's got red flags all over him, and they desperately need a corner. That's different. I don't see it in year 2 of Peters and Quinn. But thanks for the call. Those that I didn't get to, I apologize. We'll have plenty of time to do calls next week. Ben Standing next.
All right. Last night, the Washington Nationals lost 1-0. Trevor Williams got the start, pitched 5 innings, got 5 strikeouts, and gave up 1 long bomb to O'Neal Cruz. They will take on the Rockies at 8:40 on 106.7 The Fan tonight. The Caps took the L to the Pittsburgh Penguins by a score of 5-2 last night. Clay Stevenson got his first NHL start, and Alex Ovechkin notched .897, finishing third in the NHL with 44 goals behind Leon Draisaitl and William Nylander. Former Washington National Patrick Corbin picked up a 3-1 victory last night versus the LA Angels. Nearly missed the start due to a suspected spider bite. Bruce Bochy said he could hardly walk when he came into the clubhouse. After 38 years, Lee Corso has announced his retirement from broadcasting. He will give his final headgear pick on August 30th. The NBA play-in continues tonight. The Heat will take on the Hawks at 7, and the Mavs will take on the Grizzlies at 9:30. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream, turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports, and that's what's trending.
Ben Standing is with us, but before we get to Ben, spring football is in full bloom. The DC Defenders take on the San Antonio Brahmas at Audi Field this Sunday, April 20th. Get your tickets now at ufldefenders.com/tickets. That's ufldefenders.com/tickets. Ben is here at Ben Standing on X on Twitter. Standing Room Only is his podcast. Listen to it. and read him at The Athletic. He has gone through on The Athletic all of his Washington draft scenarios. I'll let you take us through just the ideas on your five mock Washington drafts. Actually, you had six of them. I'm sorry, you had six of them. Take everybody through sort of the thought process on each one, and then maybe we'll focus on one of them.
Yeah, I like doing this kind of every year, and it's, last year was clearly not about the first pick. It was about, what else might happen. But the general point of this exercise is people say they want whatever it is, an edge rusher, a running back, with the first pick. Okay, well, if that happens, then here's where you look beyond that. Some positions are deeper than others. If you wait for, like this year, if you wait for like an offensive tackle on day 2, you're going to be kind of out of luck. So it really just kind of goes through that exercise. And in 2 cases, they have 5 picks. I just made the 5 picks and just changed up some of the priorities. A couple of them I traded out of the first round, and a couple of them I traded out another part of the draft. And like I said, it's just to try to look at what makes sense. You can't always address every issue in a draft, but where can you be the most effective? And again, where are some of the where's the value in the draft? Where are some of the concerns if you wait, things like that? So it's always a fun exercise for me. And trades are fun. Who doesn't like trades?
Your very first mock in this exercise that you go through was focused on, culture, team captains, and you make 5 selections for them, including an undrafted free agent, but they're all team captains at the college level. I just had a caller say, they might be in position now with the culture they set to not worry about it as much on a truly talented player. I think there's going to be a lot of similarities in the way they approach this draft to year 1. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is where it gets so interesting about how do we assess this team. They, of course, had an incredibly successful season, but it is still early in this new incarnation with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. They're still establishing, kind of everything, the roster, the culture, and obviously the things went well last year. And I do think they are testing it a little bit by, with the Marshawn Lattimore trade, Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. Not that they're bad guys or anything, but they're all the guys who've been around the league and kind of they're not necessarily none of those guys are the captain type. So I mean, it wasn't just like they were bringing in Boy Scouts, the same way they sort of did a year ago. And I think therefore it does make sense that they're going to stay with that general thought. Now, I did when I went through this exercise, sort of tiebreakers would go to the captains, but I wasn't as dogmatic about it. The first one I did absolutely, because I think that's a reasonable thing. But after that, I kind of didn't worry about it completely with every single pick the way I did that first one. So yeah, I would think they're still going to look for those types of individuals and players, but based on those trades that they've made for the vets recently, I don't know that it is as a must-have as it was a year ago.
So next week you will have your mock draft out the day or the night before the draft on Wednesday. Ben is a multi-time mock draft champion. When will you have your Washington predicted draft out?
I think that's out for Monday, I want to say.
So can I make a prediction on that right now?
Sure.
You're going to have Donovan Izuruko, the player from Boston College, as their first pick at 29.
You think so?
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, he if we're just saying at 29, look, what do they need? Where we all believe they need an edge rusher, probably first and foremost, whether it's because they need a better, more consistent pass rush. They got to be able to stop the run, and they just need some more juice at that position. That obviously would feel like the top need. Then this guy in particular, he was a team captain at Boston College. He had 16.5 sacks last year. He's not much, probably not going to be much of an edge holding the edge there. He's only like 245 pounds or so. But yeah, there's a lot to like. I think the hope, if that's the kind of guy you want, I think the hope has got to be just that the edge rushers get pushed down the draft and they don't start going off, 2, 3, 4 in the top, 15 picks or so, which is definitely possible. This is a weird edge class. There's a lot of upside, but a lot of questions as well. So he very well could be that guy. Sure.
I mean, I think that he fits in a lot of different ways, and I just have a feeling that you've mentioned. I think you mentioned him a couple of months ago as a possibility. Tune in on Monday's show, and we'll see if we get an actual. If you'll disclose it to us, if it's out at that point. The one thing about him is he's right now coming in as a pure pass rusher. That's what he'll do for them next year. Now, they lost 10.5 sacks with Dante Fowler Jr. Leaving, but I don't know that he's an every down player. But to your point, maybe that's why they brought in, a Dietrich Wise and a Javon Kinlaw, if they're going to move him a little bit to the outside at times on, with the big size, because he's not a strong edge setter at this point. He's a bendy, explosive 6'3", 245-pound pass rusher.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there's a lot to like in terms of what he would provide, and if the goal is to, focus on getting more pressure on the pass rusher. I mean, ultimately, look, that is, we know that they've got to improve the run defense, but getting able to get after the quarterback is, incredibly important. We all get that, and they don't, what they currently have now. They've got some solid pieces, Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise, but they don't have that guy. And I don't even know that Dante Fowler was necessarily that guy, but it did work out last year where he got all the sacks. So a guy like Ezeraku, the good thing is because of the line they currently have, he's not going to be asked to come in and play 3 downs. He's going to be able to come in, do the pass rush, learn the game, learn their system, gain strength, and then, go from there. But yeah, year one, I'm sure he's going to be viewed as, more or less a pass rush specialist. And, look, they need that for this year, but longer term, obviously they've got to hope he develops into a guy that could play, more than just sort of against the pass.
Yeah, I think if they go edge rusher at 29 or edge at 29, and I think Paulie said we really should be talking about the position as defensive end because they are a 4-3 base, but that's kind of the description now of defensive ends or edge players. I think that we're going to learn a lot about what they think they really need. I mean, it'll be best player available, but if it ends up being more of an Ezeraku versus a Landon Jackson, as an example, or a JTT from Ohio State, guys that are true edge setting run stoppers, we'll learn about what they really believe to be their deficiency and what they're trying to go for. Now, that assumes also that the player is the best player on the board. Is there a player or a position, and I just asked callers this, that you don't want them to select, or you'd be surprised if they selected?
Well, and just to sort of, I'll get to that, but in terms of is Ezeraku going to be the pick or an edge guy? This is again where you have to look at the whole draft, or at least the first few rounds, and see where the strengths and weaknesses. Using our guy, Dane Brugler, our draft analyst at The Athletic, using his guide, he's got in his top 100, he's got 17 edge rushers. In going through the 4th round, he's got 24 edge rushers. Cornerbacks, I believe it's 11 in the top 100, and then 16 or so through the 4th round. And that's not a bad number to pick from, but it's less than the other. So waiting on edge. And this may be why the edge guys fall a bit in the 1st round, is because teams feel that they can get it later, and therefore Washington might think, hey, we want to take a Trey Amos, Siobhan Ravel, Benjamin Morrison, whatever it might be, in the 1st round, and then get edge later. So I think that's something to consider. In terms of what I can't see them doing. I mean, honestly, we'll assume everybody understands they're not going to take quarterback. Tight end. I mean. Look, Zach Ertz is going to be 35 and he's only on a 1-year deal, but I don't think that's a position you take in round one. And the way the board falls, it feels like they're sort of in the middle between where the top two guys are probably going to be going like top 15. And then there's a couple other guys that go round two. So that to me is a position probably don't need. Other than that, I don't know that there's I think everything is in play. I think right tackle should be in play. I think safety should be in play. Because based on the board, like no reaches, but there's a couple of safeties who probably going to go first round. I think the offensive tackles may go fairly quickly because if you look on Dane's list between numbers 25 and 75, I think there's like 2 offensive tackles in that whole range. So if a Josh Simmons or a Josh Connerly is there, I don't think that's crazy to take that and look to further upgrade the line and maybe ultimately look at Brandon Coleman as a guard. So I don't really think there's anything that's that nuts. I mean, I guess you could talk running back is the positional value there. Maybe not, but if Travion Henderson's sitting there, Ohio State running back, I'm going to definitely consider it. He can be a 3-down back. He's got tremendous, wiggle running. He's a great pass blocker. So nothing to me.
And a high quality kid, apparently, by all accounts.
Yeah, another.
I got to roll. Yeah. I'm up against a hard break. Thanks. We'll talk on Monday when Skins mock is out. Real quickly, this from Clayton. Sabah is right. Hampton's Derrick Henry. No, he's not. Derrick Henry, and I wanted to just go look it up to make sure. Derrick Henry was 6'3", 252. All right, he got drafted, by the way, in the second round. I thought he should have gone higher than that. Hampton's 6 foot 220. They basically ran the same 40, but Derrick Henry was a much more freakish human being at his size and being able to run the way he ran. All right. Heavy draft on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. Chris is next.